So I want to talk about something real quick and just kind of give my opinion on it. At the moment, there's a lot of debate about the Ancestral Tableau. The reason in particular is the warband activity. This is not being 100% well received by the community. A lot of people are saying, and I actually want to make an argument for why I think this update could potentially be decent. The warband activity here takes a lot of grinding. It takes a significant amount of grinding. Like to get the 1,000 points is one thing, but then to get the 1,500 points, the last 500 it's 4 times longer of a grind. So because of that, getting these 1,500 points is realistically like getting 3,000 warband activity points. And then the reason that's so important is because you're upgrading these, which basically straight give you combat rating and stats. I mean, it's just literal raw stats that rewards upgrades here. So this is very similar, if you actually think about it, in terms of how the blacksmith is. Like when you go and upgrade this stuff, right? This is just purely raw stats. It's basically the same way, but if we don't worry about the Reforged bonus, etc., because the Reforged bonus is sort of like the properties and invocations. And we're just talking about the raw stats for the moment, the Tableau. So these here, when the game, they're server Paragon tied. So one point I want to make is when the game launched, one of the largest complaints I saw from the community was that these blacksmith upgrades don't really feel like if you're grinding, you get rewarded because they're tied to server Paragon levels. It made some of the grinders quit because they felt like I can't grind to get ahead of the wells just by playing the game a lot. And this is a Diablo game. I feel like my contributions in terms of time effort should be able to be significant in terms of reward to my character. And I actually thought that that is a fair point, and was some of the reasons some of the more hardcore people in the community quit. Now, what I would like to make the argument here today, and I'm not saying the community's points are wrong about it taking forever. It does take forever, but is this not a spiritual successor to the same concept that we, the community, asked for earlier, which is extra grinding gives you basically the same thing as the blacksmith upgrades. This was one of the points that I saw people really wanted, was like, why can't all of my salvage and all these things I earned earlier back when, you know, you could actually upgrade fairly quickly and the salvage didn't take for much. Now you need a lot of salvage to do it, etc. But back in the day, people were like, I want to be able to push past with grinding and have the people that just swiped have to compete with me, the grinder. In my argument, this is something that's not tied to cash. This is just grinding with a warband, with people that you're playing with. So it's incentivizing grinders to come together and contribute to each other as grinders. Now, I know there's a problem, and I have contributed to my opinion on this problem of it forcing players to play with each other at certain times, etc. This doesn't do that too much, except for one problem, which I think probably needs to be addressed. Currently, the warband activity, there's not too many ways to get this activity. You either need to do the endless mode grind, which isn't realistic, or you need to do purge the depths. Both of these aren't really realistic for gaining activity points. What actually ends up coming down to is you end up just doing the warband raids over and over and over again. So we have this weird side like grind loop of just almost a temporary job where what you're going to be doing is just grinding the same warband over and over and over again for X amount of times a week in order to get your points, and then everyone's kind of done. You go back to playing the game. The way you get the points probably needs to be resolved, but the argument I want to make today in closing is that this is reminding me very much of something that people asked for prior, which is, even though it's maybe not the type of person I'm in, maybe I'm not the type of person that wants to play this game 10 hours a day and be a super hardcore grinder. Maybe I am more of the casual player, okay? But for the people that were upset that grinding was not rewarded and that they couldn't get combat rating from it, they couldn't get any sort of advantage for their time in the game, this is an answer to those types of players. Now, I want to make one other point, which is why I believe this is partially not being well received. In the beginning, these types of players that would like this update have since quit the game, and the people that do not like these types of updates would have stayed, because the game was not rewarding, in my personal opinion, to heavy grinders prior, so the grinders have then quit, and the casuals, people like me who are going to play 4 hours a day, which is the way the game was basically intended, have since stayed in the game. And when we come out with what, in my opinion, is a grinder heavy / friendly type of update, the community that has since stayed will not like this type of update, because this is targeted towards the type of audience that they have already burned. That's my one opinion and how I see this update. Now, I don't want to come up here and just be like, this is a trash update, because I actually quite like some of the stuff in this update, but I wanted to say why I believe it's not being as well received and why I think the reasons behind that are, even if this could be a fairly well designed, well intentioned, grind friendly, free to play friendly update, we probably don't have as many of those players left, is sort of my opinion on it. But I don't think in theory it's actually as bad of an update as it's currently getting flamed for. I think there's a lot of animosity for us getting forced into warbands. And if you don't have a warband, maybe it's not as enjoyable. And I can understand that point. That's a fair point. So I hear those points. But this is just one such view, one such take. Let me know your thoughts about it. Love you all. See you in the comments.